Tiffany Beveridge. Cheers.
Cheers. I like that intro.
No pun intended.
Tell me that's your best intro.
That was. It was. It is.
I love that.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
it's
you.
the first time I met you.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
The handshake was epic.
I
It
think
was a handshake with the other hand over yours or mine.
yes,
Very warm.
I guess that's my signature move. I've had other people compliment my handshaking abilities. So
That tells
thank
me.
you for noticing.
Well, yeah, that tells me you mean business, and that's what we're here to talk about.
There you go.
So let's start with your dance studio. Just a little bit of background, actually.
Sure. Yeah.
There's a lot to delve into. I just want to know where it all started for you.
Of course, yeah. So I've always been a dancer my whole life. I grew up in a dance studio as of 3 years old, I believe it was. I've been taking lessons.
Right.
It was never really my intention at the beginning to own my own place. If you asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would tell you I'm going to be on Broadway. I'm going to win a Tony Award. I want to be the star. That was my mindset. And then looking back, I always had these little like habits that now I can see that I was just meant to be an entrepreneur.
yeah.
I was making bracelets on, after school and selling them to family members, or I had a paper route, just always hustling my whole
Anybody
life.
that has a paper route, I know they're destined to business ownership in the near future.
Right?
I had the same thing.
No way.
It's in grade 6 is when I started.
Yeah. Yeah, and it was to the point where like I would go out. It would be blistering cold out, and my grandpa would drive his minivan from house to house with hot chocolate for me. But I was just determined to do this by myself.
Shout out to Grandpa.
Yeah, he's the best. I just when my friends were excited to go back to school shopping, I was more pumped to go to Grand and Toy. Remember that store?
Grand and Toy.
It was like a Staples.
Was it around
back
local?
in the day? Yeah, I think there was one at Jackson Square.
Okay.
I wanted stationery. I wanted pens and pencils and business stuff.
Oh, okay. I think I know what you're talking about.
So I just, looking back, I'm like, oh yeah, of course I own a business now.
Right.
Like that's what I was into. And then just growing up, I was really involved in my dance studio. I started assisting in high school, and then eventually getting my own classes to teach on my own. And then that kind of just, in a nutshell, led to me networking, making connections within the dance world, and then finally purchasing my own studio. So
Purchasing your own studio.
yeah.
The influence and basically what form of dance did you start with as a child? I want to go there too, because with my
Sure.
daughter, it's it was hip hop and jazz. Was that for the same, or was it what kind of influences that was behind that?
Yeah. So I did it all. I did the tap, the jazz, the ballet.
Yeah.
We moved into musical theater, acro, and then eventually hip hop became popular. Probably when I was in high school, it just started making an entrance into the competition world and stuff. And funny enough, hip hop is essentially what started my dance career because there are so many opportunities in hip hop. I've done backup dancing, I've danced at concerts, stuff like that.
Some big names too. We're gonna get into, but so hip hop would have been most kind of now. Fast forward, you mentioned you ended it off just not too long ago about purchasing a dance studio.
Yep.
What goes into that? Because that's a huge undertaking, right?
Yeah, so there's two ways you can go. You can start one from scratch.
Yeah.
You lease a building and you just start handing out flyers and building your contact list. Or there's purchasing off of an
existing
current owner. Yeah, and that's what happened to me.
And did you own a business prior to that? But I know you had business acumen, like you
I
had that
did.
entrepreneur spirit.
I did.
Right.
I started a company where I did freelance dance teaching.
Okay.
So I would rent out rooms in rec centers, and I would run workshops, and I would hire other teachers to come in and like just jam pack a day full of dance classes. So that was my first registered business. It was called, what was it called?
That's pretty cool.
The Dynamite Dance Project.
Yeah.
I haven't said that probably since I was, oh my God, I think I was maybe 19.
You're
and
19
and I
years old.
registered that business, and I would rent out rooms in rec centers, some sketchy ones, some nice ones, aerobics rooms and gyms, and and just run workshops.
And what year did you buy that business?
My studio,
Your studio now,
I purchased it in 2009.
2009. Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So the owner of the studio was someone that I worked for. I was
Okay.
their hip hop teacher.
Gotcha.
And then I went off. I actually traveled around a lot. I lived in the U.S. and in Italy for a little bit. And then upon moving back home, it kind of just fell into my lap, per se.
Right.
She was looking to sell. I was looking to start over again.
Right.
And she asked me if I was interested. And
And see those opportunities, seizing those opportunities, you have to make a choice, like,
oh yeah.
or it's just going to be missed because she's probably exiting for retirement and things like that. And if you're not ready to say, "Hey, I got the bag," what encouraged you? What gave you the confidence to make that decision? Because obviously you come from the background, you know the business, you worked for her. But it's
Definitely.
a different animal when you're running a business
100%.
and teaching dance, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how deep you want to get.
Let's go as deep as possible.
All right. Well, so I lived in the U.S. For a year, and then in Italy for 6 months. I moved around because my boyfriend at the time was playing hockey.
Gotcha.
So it's funny to think, but I quit my jobs. I left my family. I sold my car to move and pursue his dreams. So we traveled around a bit. Wherever I lived, I was always hustling. I was working at rec centers and trying to find side jobs here and there, teaching and private lessons and tutoring and stuff like that. And then eventually when that didn't work out is when I moved back home. And I remember saying to myself when I moved back home, I had nothing. I had no car. I was in my parents' basement. And I said, I just need a sign that I'm supposed to be home. Like I thought my life was going this way. And then here I am in my parents' basement. Like, tell me that I just made a good decision.
Yeah.
And I'm not lying to you. Maybe 3 or 4 days later is when I got a phone call from the studio owner and said, do you want to meet for lunch?
Wow.
Yeah. And on that lunch, she asked if I wanted to buy her studio.
Wow. Take people back to that feeling in your basement, in your parents' basement.
Oh, it was
You're
wild.
like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
I've just given up so much of my life to this guy. Thinking didn't work out.
Yep.
And you're back now. What
Exactly.
was that pit of your stomach? Like, what does that feel like?
Oh my, so many emotions. So
Yeah.
right before I left for the States, I was probably at what I would say was the height of my professional dance career. So I was dancing for well-known rappers. I was getting flown on tour to different provinces in Canada. It was going good.
Can we talk about some of the rappers?
1,000%.
Yeah, what kind of names?
Yeah.
What kind of names?
Snoop Dogg was one of them.
Okay.
I danced for Genuine. And then the main rapper that I went on tour with, his name is Belly.
Yeah, I know Bella. That's Canadian.
Yeah,
Canadian.
yeah. He's friends with The Weeknd.
Yeah, yeah.
Name drop. So I went on tour with him. I actually started, I did a couple award shows for him, the MMVAs, and did a little home tour, little gigs like MTV Live and stuff like that.
So it was some big things you're doing while you're supporting
Big
his
things.
boyfriends.
Yeah. Yeah. And both of us were here in Ontario.
Right.
And then it was when he got the call to go to the States.
Right.
And he said, hey, come with me. This is going to be great. And, I was young.
Of course. Yeah. And it felt right to do.
Exactly.
And everything that we've done, or I don't think there's regret, because you can always learn from the decisions you made. But
I love that you say that. I have a tattoo that says,
is that right?
I regret nothing. Yes.
I regret nothing.
That is my motto in life.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Oh, so there you go.
Yeah,
so,
that's funny.
So you come back, you have this phone call. You're like, okay, this is something. You sit down, cross. Mm-hmm. Let me ask, were they asking everything under the sun for it, or were they reasonable? Because again, you're how old at that point in time?
I was 23. 23 or 24.
23, 24. That's extremely young to take on that, you know, because you most likely, if it's not gifted or, you know, it's borrowed. What kind of risk assessments did you have to go through to make that decision final?
So I had a great working relationship with this woman. Like I said, I had taught for her previously when she was the owner and I was the hip hop teacher. So we had a good understanding of, you know, she knew what I was going through at the moment. So when she explained her situation, and her thing was that her kids were getting older, she was kind of missing them grow up. They weren't dancers. So whereas my children live in the studio with me, I'm so lucky that they love dance because they just come to work with me.
And how many do you have?
I have 2 girls.
Beautiful.
Yeah, and they live there with me. They love it.
Yeah.
And I'm lucky that they do. So her children didn't. So she was missing out on after school sports and all that kind of stuff. So that's why she was kind of wanting to get out. She wanted more family
balance,
time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas me, I had all the time in the world. Yeah. So when she explained that and said, you know, I need someone to buy it, you came to mind. I don't admit this very often, but I said yes immediately. I didn't even, we hadn't even gone over paperwork or numbers.
She wanted it. You know,
I knew it was, I knew it was a successful business. I knew the background of it. I knew the town.
You knew what it came with.
Yes. Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
It came with a book of business.
Yeah. A great reputation in town.
Great reputation. But then also you knew the talent that you had, that you could take the baton and carry on and make it even better.
I was confident. Some people look at the situation I was in and be like, oh man, I'm sorry. Like you just lost everything. You're in your parents' basement. But I look at it as it couldn't have been a more perfect time for me to take on such a big undertaking because I was really starting from scratch. Right. So I had all the time in the world to put into this business and make it what I wanted it to.
And it was a great distraction.
1,000%.
It was a great distraction because, I mean, as we all know, going through relationships, heartbreaks, or whatever, how you want to describe it, it's no easy to get over. So this business became your grounding.
Exactly. It's saved me basically.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah. And I put the effort in that maybe other people might not have had if they just took it on, you know, and in their normal life, but I had the drive and I had the time and I had everything on my side basically. To put into it, and make it what I wanted.
And what are you teaching from that studio now? It's Caledonia Dance Studio.
Yeah,
right?
It's called the Caledonia Studio of Dance.
Okay.
I kept the same name that it originally was.
Smart.
Oh yeah, it was it had a great reputation in town. I didn't want to mess with that.
Of course.
So we kept it all the same, kept the logo the same. I rebranded a little bit, obviously, but I wanted it to be a small transition. It's a smaller town, so that's kind of a big deal.
You don't want to change too much things.
No.
Small town, big politics.
You bet. You got it.
Yeah. What did she do?
I'm sure it's the same
it is in Grimsby. Trust me.
Small town vibes. Yeah. So you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so when I bought it, I was teaching everything as much as I physically could. So I was there every night. When I started, I had 2 studio rooms. So obviously when I was in one, I had to have another person in the other room. So I think I started with a staff of 4 or 5 plus me. So it was me and then whoever was in that other room. But I was teaching everything, jazz, tap, ballet. Oh yeah. Everything I had to.
Yeah. And you probably saved yourself a lot of money instead of iron. That's what you have to do.
For sure, yeah.
So did you give yourself a timeline though, as far as growth and stuff like you have to come in with a business plan, also an operating, but you still have to come in with a plan.
Exactly.
You know? Yeah.
So I remember sitting in Italy. I was in northern Italy with my boyfriend at the time, and I had nothing but my laptop. There was no TV. It was in another language. Everything closed down by 6 p.m. So I would sit there and write plans. In Italy, what I was going to do when I had this amount of students, how I was going to grow here, what birthday party packages. Like my mind was just. So when I came home, I essentially had all of that ready to go. So I just started implementing right away.
Plugging it in.
Yeah.
When it comes to, I know a lot of these programs that you have, come in, have fun, and then you have the competition, the very competitive one. I've seen competitive dance studios. How do you motivate kids to stay focused and locked in?
So now it's a very different world now than it was when I bought the studio.
Right.
When I bought the studio, the previous owner did a fantastic job of building her competitive team. They were well known. They were winning awards. There was trophies everywhere. So when I came in, my plan was to build the rec program, because the recreational program is basically your bread and butter. They're there once a week, but they pay full price. There should be more of them than your comp team. The comp team is there so much that essentially they're paying so little per class because they get multi-class discounts and stuff. So you need a good rec program. So that was my first task, was to build that program.
Gotcha.
And then once that was secure and good, then I started, inviting some onto the comp team. But it's a whole
feisty
different
world.
Oh man,
I've
world.
seen,
Yeah.
do you remember those TLC shows?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And so that's kind of where my experience with this whole thing was. That's this is why I'm directing. So I found it very interesting because it's a hard thing to be consistent with, to have kids stay motivated and stay liking it and loving it, and also when they get into some of these competitions, the competition level it gets really competitive, right?
Totally.
So I wanted to see what your strategies with that, because it's like is it almost like a pride thing when it comes to your studio being the winner and things like that? How does that all play?
Yeah. So back to your question, my motivating them back then when I first took over, I find wasn't as hard, because if they made that commitment to join the competitive program, that you fill out an agreement form, you know what the requirements are and how many classes you're allowed to miss, and et cetera, et cetera. Nowadays, and a lot has to do with COVID, but the motive, it's just a different world. So my strategy for motivating my team, definitely, it starts with the culture that I have in my studio. I make sure that I say it so many times, but I'm a big person on studio culture and making sure everyone feels welcome and encouraged. I try really hard to give my students a lot of outside opportunities. So not just performing at the year-end show, but maybe doing local events, joining the Santa Claus parade, or performing at an event in town, going to the old folks' home and stuff like that. So they feel more like they're part of like a family, a group, and they're not just there to take their class and go home.
Right.
So I feel like that helps a lot motivate, because they like you said, feel pride in being a part of the team, so they want to do well and feel good. And then another part of motivating them is just having a great staff, and I've got a lot of talented instructors at my studio that win a lot of awards and recognition. Right. So they're motivated to be on those teams with those teachers and win and be recognized.
Beautiful.
So.
How did you come out of COVID? Like,
I don't know. I don't know how I'm here right now.
How did you do it? Seriously.
Oh man. So I'm a little biased because it's my industry, but I do feel like youth sports and the arts kind of fell through the cracks a lot during COVID. There were days when we were locked down because we were part of an indoor sports, and then there were days that we were locked down because we were part of fitness, and they never knew where to put us. So it just seemed like, when in doubt, shut down the dance studios. They're not needed right now. Right. So it was a really hard time, and a lot of studios unfortunately didn't make it. There was another studio in town that unfortunately closed down because of it. Okay. It's still happening to this day, even like trickling. Yeah, it's almost 2023, and there was one that just closed a couple weeks ago. So it's really sad to see, because to be honest, you don't go into owning a studio to be a millionaire. It's not about the money. It's about the passion.
Yeah.
So to be in a business that's always kind of right here and to have COVID hit, it
was devastating.
It was devastating.
Yeah.
So,
I always thought like, it's just so backwards to, I know we had to have certain restrictions, but it's the most healthiest thing mentally and physically. When my daughter goes to her dance studio here in Grimsby, like when I drop her off, one person, but when I pick her up, like it's a totally different person. It's like her serenity kind of thing.
Yep.
So it must have been so tough on those kids as well. How were you able to support them during that?
So I'm the queen of pivoting, COVID or not. So I don't know why, I'm just wired that way. So when COVID hit, we flipped everything online.
It's the ballet.
It must be. That's right. Smart of you. For all that don't know, pivot is a dance move. We switched everything online. We got a virtual studio up and running. We were holding live classes on Zoom, which sucks. I'll let you know right now.
Oh, I know. I went through it. No space.
Oh, it was awful. It was probably moving furniture in your house. It was it was not a good. It was good for 2 weeks, and then it got really tough. So I tried to keep them motivated again, just with that culture, keeping them to feel part of a family.
Right.
I was holding Zoom Easter egg hunts online for the kids, and just making them feel like when they logged in, they knew that they'd see a familiar face, and maybe one day we didn't even dance. We just talked about how they were feeling and kept them kind of engaged. Helped a lot. So
that's awesome. Now there's a couple things that you're doing. You have the studio, but you also have just launched a charity. Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So we're a federal nonprofit.
Okay.
We're registered federally in Canada, and we're called the Canadian Football Cheerleaders Alumni Organization.
Whoa.
So say that 3 times fast. Now, the CFCAO. So essentially, it's a bunch of CFL cheerleader alumni. We got together, and we wanted to give back to our communities. We started cheerleading to give back to our communities, and then one day, unfortunately, we all have to hang up the pom-poms, but we still have that sense of,
once a cheerleader, always a cheerleader.
There you go. That's right.
That's I'm not a cheerleader, but
I
know the personality
there
behind
you go.
It.
Yeah.
It gives you great joy, right?
Oh, absolutely. I cheerleaded for 6 years, and I would say the first 4 of them were completely volunteer work.
Right.
So there's no pay at all, but we did it because we loved it. We loved
So
performing.
you would think though, like CFL, that thought there would be more of that support, but there isn't.
No, cheerleaders are definitely, and this is generally speaking, but put on the back burner for sure. I understand that budgets are a massive thing, and we're just unfortunately always
in
near
my
the
opinion, I
bottom.
think you guys should be on the roster.
Well, thank you. I think so too. But so kind of always left behind and left out, and I was mentioning to you earlier, they do a lot of fundraising just to get to Grey Cup because it's not really in the budget to send.
My goodness, what
team.
if they don't make it? Like what happens?
Yeah, there was one year we didn't go. We had to watch. I remember watching from Filthy McNasty's on Upper James, watching the Grey Cup with my team because we couldn't get there that year. So
So you've had a lot of experiences, dancing with or for a lot of celebrities. Tell me what that's like. Mm-hmm. How do you get those opportunities? Like, it's interesting.
Yeah, so
you must be good, obviously. But without the saying, an opportunity sometimes it just doesn't fall on your, lap.
Dance, the dance world, A, is very small, and B, it has a lot to do with who you know.
That's right.
So. I would take class. I remember I was probably 17, 18, and just driving myself to Toronto. We're so lucky to be in the area that we are for the arts because there are so many opportunities half an hour down the road from us.
And I think Hamilton had a little bit of that too.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I feel like I preach that so much to my kids because I did travel in the States and in Italy where I had nothing. I knew no studios in the area to audition at or anything. So I understand now how lucky we are to be in the area if you're in the arts.
Right.
Because there's just auditions and shows and artists everywhere. So yeah, I would drive myself down and take class every night. And then you start to know the teachers and you hear the people dancing beside you. Oh, I just had a rehearsal with so-and-so. And you're
Right.
like, oh my gosh. And then the teacher, one day they need a short blonde girl for their whatever
Right.
TV series.
Whatever's casting.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then they're like, hey, that girl comes to my class every Monday. Like, and that's pretty much how my career
So
started.
it's hard work meets opportunity.
1,000%.
Those drive from Caledonia all the way up to
Yeah.
Toronto,
Yeah.
downtown
Toronto. Yes.
Those are miles and many miles or kilometers that you chose to.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Are they difficult to work with?
I'll tell you a funny story.
Sure.
I did my first Grey Cup. Actually, we danced for Shania Twain.
Okay.
She was the halftime performer, and
Right. I think I remember that. Yeah.
2002 in Edmonton, and
It's freezing cold, wasn't it?
so cold.
Yeah.
And we didn't get to meet her. We weren't allowed to speak with her.
You're not allowed to speak with her.
No, I had one picture.
Yeah.
And it was from far away, and she had a bodyguard or somebody with their arm around her, and they were walking through the tunnel to get onto the field or
I
something.
mean, she's a Canadian treasure.
That was the only picture we got is of the back of her head.
Yeah.
I remember that. Well, I don't really want to bash her on here. I heard she just has very specific things that need to happen when she's traveling with her team. So
Right. The
we
diva
were like,
stuff.
yeah, and I was like, "Whoa, you're from Timmins? That's
Yeah.
kind of crazy." But yeah, but then there's others that are like amazing.
Yeah.
I did a Grey Cup with Black Eyed Peas.
Ooh, that would have been fun.
It was amazing. So
Yeah.
when they were doing their sound tech, we had to be on the field to practice our routine. And Fergie was like talking to us and like
Down to earth.
singing and then talking. It was awesome.
Yeah.
So there's some really
I like
cool
vibes like that.
Yeah. It makes it so much more.
Of course.
fun.
Just be human,
Yeah.
Just be human. I'm sure, you're worth millions and millions and millions of dollars, but
Yep.
just don't take yourself too seriously.
Exactly.
Now. Let's-
Yeah.
let's-
I have actually a huge appreciation for her because of that experience with her. So,
Yeah. So that's cool. So you have this dance studio, you have this charity. Now, how are you balancing everything? Like the charity, yes, you can touch base when you have a collective group. I'm sure you have a board and everything else, but you have to have some programs, right? You have to make sure those programs are working and stuff like that. So how are you balancing everything?
Yeah. So for my nonprofit, I have the most incredible board you could ever imagine. My partner, Rayanne, who I need to recognize because she's just fantastic, really takes the reins on that for us. We're like the yin and yang, I would say.
Yeah.
But she's amazing. So she really handles all of the day-to-day operations of our nonprofit. And luckily, our nonprofit is somewhat seasonal. So when the CFL season is underway, we're busy, we're doing events. And then once Grey Cup's over, we kind of have a little break throughout the winter until we start planning for next year. So that helps. And work-life balance, I don't, I'm probably not the best to state any advice on that because I love what I do so much that it somehow finds its way. It's woven into my.
It's kind of helpful that your two wonderful kids love being at the studio.
For sure.
There's no complaints.
No. If my kids did other sports, I would be lost. If they were hockey players, I'd be like, because it wouldn't work. So
but it's so much fun for kids. I mean, jam with mom and dad. Like even in my household, anything music comes on, it's a good time.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that's what I love about dance is anyone can do it, and everyone has that love of just moving. And you hear a song and it makes you want to dance.
Right.
Just
What about parents? Dealing with parents?
well, no, I luckily, knock on wood, have never really dealt with anything extreme. I think the TV shows that we spoke about a little kind of dramatize it a little. I am sure there are some places in heavy areas like LA or
Right. Somewhere
stuff like
where
that, New York City.
they're going to have them become a star.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're a lot more cutthroat than Caledonia.
Yeah.
But honestly, if I ever come across a situation that's becoming difficult, I always step back and think these parents are just advocating for their children.
Yeah,
So
just
in the
love.
end of the
It's just
day,
love.
and maybe they're not
A little
expressing
bit blinded sometimes, bias
for
a little
sure,
bit.
for
You know,
sure.
I'm saying this from a parent's perspective. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
my darling, what'd she do? Come on.
And honestly, that's just a genuine response because you see your child how they are at home and then they might be different in the classroom, and it usually comes down to just some miscommunication where once we meet and diffuse the situation, it usually works itself out. So
what's the most popular dance program right now? Is it jazz? Is it hip hop?
Good question.
Yeah.
So I find that styles tend to like ebb and flow. There's some times when tap is really popular, and then it's kind of in a lull at the moment. My tap program anyways. But one that I find now that is picking up and everybody wants to do it is the contemporary.
Contemporary.
Yeah, and contemporary is like it's like a slower based. Picture your favorite slow song.
Yeah.
A really sad one. The one when you're in a bad mood and you just play it and get all your feels out. It's basically creating a dance to that story, whatever they're singing about.
Oh, okay. That's
very
pretty
emotional.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's popular because it's a lot. It's really in the mainstream of dance right now. Like on TV, you see it on those content, like So You Think You Can Dance, shows like that.
You know what though, man, you can really develop some great dancing off of words.
That's how essentially we create our routines.
Well, I had no idea.
No way.
No.
Well, there
so
you
in
go.
The Shallow, for example, in The Shallow with Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
That'll be a good one.
That would be
I'm not sure for the It's one of my favorites.
Okay, see?
It's one of those
so you understand. So you somehow you connect with that song and the lyrics and whatever you envision when you hear that song, we take that vision and we create movement to it. And that's how you
And that's called contemporary.
Yeah, contemporary or lyrical. There's a fine line between the two,
But that's, I mean, things can get really interesting. Mm-hmm. So I had no idea that's how
you
develop dancing.
Yeah.
So are you saying then the dancing and how to dance to something comes after the music's made or the lyrics?
I would definitely say it depends on the style. That's how I like to create. I take a phrase of the music, say a paragraph, or just say today I'm going to be working on the verse.
Right.
So I take the words and what they're saying, and then I create the movement to it. And then each week we add on a little bit. But I usually go by the lyrics, and then it helps me create. Whereas hip hop, maybe, or jazz, which is fast and funky and jumps and turns, it's not really, the movement doesn't have to pair with what they're saying, really. Yeah. So then you would go by counts. Yeah. So that's why you hear us say 5, 6, 7, 8 all the time.
And then you got.
Then we start.
And then there's always, obviously, you got to always watch yourself. So when there's mirrors at all times.
Yep.
Yeah. Without a mirror, you can't dance, right?
Exactly.
You can't get all the dance.
Yeah. So the mirror is there because the kids have to learn from behind you so they can tell what foot to go on. Oh, okay. The mirror is there so that they can watch themselves at the same time while they're learning from us. I actually have a tattoo, if you don't mind me sharing.
Yeah, of course.
It says inspire, but it's backwards because I'm always in the mirror. So when I'm teaching, you can read it.
Love that.
But when it's just there, it's backwards.
That's so cool. Yeah. That's very cool.
Thank you.
Favorite dancer of all time, let's say in hip hop, dead or alive, what would you say?
Ooh. Well, anyone who's a dancer that doesn't say Twitch is lying. You know,
Right.
you have to know Twitch.
I
Do you know
have.
Twitch?
I feel like I have to.
Twitch,
I'm
you
so
do have
sorry.
to. Twitch got hired by Ellen DeGeneres. He was the DJ on his show.
Yes. I know him.
He started out just as a dancer.
Right.
He auditioned for So You Think You Can Dance. I don't believe he won, but he became popular through the show.
Yeah,
and then
he's
made a
good.
career. Yeah,
he's good. He's got this powerful type. Like he's.
Oh yeah, very animated.
Yeah.
I can't do that, but
Yeah.
but great personality, and I feel like that really pairs with when you're as a dancer. Your personality pairs with your talent, because if you don't
Right.
have one, you probably won't go far. But he's blessed in many ways, so he's probably one of my favorites.
Okay, now I know exactly what you're talking about. Are you into music as well, or?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yes.
Yeah, and you're pretty.
You kind of have to when you're a dance teacher. You got to kind of know what's out there, but also have a repertoire of classic songs or artists that you can pull from.
Again, to develop the new dance move.
Yeah, and make them our dancers more worldly. Like we want to teach them about music as well as dance.
Right, and they go hand in hand. Huh, interesting.
I just had a conversation today at my studio. One of my teachers, she's my contemporary teacher.
Right.
And the kids, the teenagers, of course, are wanting to know the songs. That's the fun part of the season, is when you get to find out what you're dancing to. And they're like, who is it? Is it Dermot Kennedy? Is it, all the current people that are on the radio right now? Who? And she picked Nat King Cole.
Ooh.
And they're like, who?
Yeah, that's old.
But just,
so good.
she like I said, she had a vision and she found the song, and they're like, okay. And you just,
some of the best music though, you got to go back, man.
oh yeah.
You got to go back. I love listening to like B.B. King and what would you call it in that genre? The blues, I guess?
Blues, yeah.
But I like Frank Sinatra too. Like,
ooh, yeah.
Yeah. Frank Sinatra, the Rat Pack. Just the oldies,
It's
man.
endless. Yeah. You can go back. I remember when I first started teaching at my studio, my kids didn't even know who Prince was.
Ooh.
So then I'm like, well, next week we're having a Prince day. And that's all I played through the whole hour was.
So now he's been known, and I want to learn a little bit about you, but he's very popular with obviously certain demographics. But what was he more known for? Was this his guitar? He's a guitarist, or what was he known for? Was his lyrics, or?
You know what?
I don't know too much about Prince.
Yeah, and, well, to be honest with you, me either, other than his hits.
Yeah.
So, like, when I think of Prince, I think like Purple Rain, Let's Go Crazy. Like I go by his music rather than him as an individual. So, I don't know, but he was very passionate. Like if you listen to the words of his songs, it was very. Yeah, not things that you would really hear today in today's music.
The only song I know is Purple Rain.
Yeah, that's a good one. Dance to that one. Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're just coming up to the end of our conversation, but I wanted to just talk about, you are someone that's a leader, a woman in leadership. What can you say to that young girl that's listening, or the young person that's listening, to follow for their dreams and take that risk and become you? What would you say? So
funny enough, I do have this conversation a lot. I'm lucky to be in the position to try to be a good role model for many young girls at my studio and boys. Yeah. So we talk about this a lot, and they come to me or I come to them. And I just always refer back to just slowing it down, realizing what you want to do in your heart, taking people's advice, but not listening to it all.
Yeah.
And
that's just the part that was not listening to it in like entirety, but I think you said it on there, not listening to it at all.
And not everybody knows your vision and what you see and what you feel and what would work for you. And I think a lot of people's opinions come out of their own fear and not wanting to see you fail.
That's right.
I have my mother is my bestest friend. She actually works at my studio. She's my office man. Yeah, Cheryl. She's the best. She keeps me going. But we're polar opposites. She's super organized, very diligent, worrywart, and I'm like fly by the seat of my pants. Super ambitious, tries to take on everything. So she kind of settles me down a bit. But yeah, I think so. For her being my favorite person in the world, if I listened to everything she told me, though,
Right.
I probably wouldn't have a dance studio right now. So
Respectfully.
yes, you got to take the advice and listen to it, and then make your own decision from there. So
that's such a great advice.
that's key.
Well, Tiffany, thanks so much for coming. How do people get in touch with you?
Yeah, so I love social media. So you can find me at Dance Diva Tiff online, and I love posting just different dance events that are going on in the area, auditions. So I always encourage people to follow me there. If you're in the dance world and you want to see what's going on, I try to share a lot of events and things that are going on. Perfect. So that's key. And Facebook, Instagram, whatever.
You're all there.
I'm all over the place.
You're all there.
Yeah.
You're all there. Well, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you.
We'll do this again.
Love it.